The morning light filtered through the blinds of my bungalow in Mount Pleasant, carrying with it the faint smell of salt from the harbor. I had just finished paying a bill online when I set my credit card down on the dining table beside a half-empty cup of coffee. My joints ached from the night before, and I told myself I'd put the card back in my wallet after rinsing the dishes. Camilla came in not long after, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She was dressed for brunch downtown, hair loose and glossy the way she always liked. Her eyes landed on the card, and a smile tugged at her mouth, still carrying plastic. "Mom," she teased, lifting her phone as if to demonstrate the power of a digital wallet. "You know, some people don't even touch cards anymore. One tap and done." I laughed softly, waving off her comment. Old habits die hard. Besides, I like knowing something tangible is in my hand. She rolled her eyes but kissed me on the cheek before heading toward the door. "Don't be surprised when the world passes you by." I watched her go, the echo of her perfume lingering long after she left. My gaze drifted back to the card on the table. I thought about sliding it into my wallet, but then the kettle whistled from the kitchen. I turned away, letting the card rest there a little longer. Trust had become second nature between us, woven through decades of sacrifice and forgiveness. I believed she knew better. I wanted to believe it. I carried the dishes to the sink, never realizing that a single oversight would unravel far more than a morning routine and carry me into the history of every choice I had made for her. After Camilla left that morning, the house felt as it often did, quiet, but not peaceful. The silence reminded me of the years after my husband's accident on the harbor. One slip of machinery, one broken cable, and my world was split in two. I was 38, a widow in Charleston, with a daughter who had only just turned 10 and looked to me for everything. There was no time for grief in the way novels describe it. Bills arrived with clockwork precision, and Camilla still needed shoes for school, lunches packed, hair braided before class. I took every class they would give me at the College of Charleston, lecturing in the mornings, tutoring in the evenings, grading papers until midnight. Some nights I nodded off over my desk, only to wake with ink smudged on my cheek. I saved with discipline, counting every dollar as if it had to stretch across the Atlantic. The dream was simple. Camilla would not just go to college, she would go without worry. When the acceptance letter from the University of South Carolina arrived, I wept in the kitchen, holding the envelope as if it were proof that sacrifice could turn into opportunity. The tuition was steep. I worked summers, picked up extra students, lived on thrift store coats and day-old bread. Still, I wrote each check with steady hands. When her wedding came years later, I dipped into my retirement account without hesitation. She wanted magnolias on every table, a string quartet by the water, the kind of day that photographs could never quite capture. I told myself it was worth it, that watching her walk down the aisle was payment enough. And yet, even as she smiled for the camera and kissed Damon beneath the oaks, I saw in her eyes the same hunger I had seen since childhood. It was never just about enough. It was always about more. I learned to live with that. Until the afternoon I reached for my card again and discovered how fragile my faith in her really was. Charleston has always been a city that performs for the eye-painted houses. Wrought iron balconies, carriages carrying tourists down King Street. Camilla fit that stage too well. Most weekends, she could be found drifting in and out of boutiques, her arms heavy with glossy bags that bore names I could hardly pronounce. She tagged herself at waterfront cafes, mimosas sparkling in tall glasses, writing captions about coastal luxury as if it were her birthright. I scrolled through her photos sometimes, pausing at the smile she saved for the camera. It wasn't the one she used with me. This one was sharper, practiced, made to convince the world she belonged in every gilded room. I told myself that if it made her happy, it was harmless. but deep down I knew it was a hunger that no purchase would fill. There were moments when I thought I saw the cost of it in my own life. A $20 bill missing from the kitchen drawer, a checkbook entry I didn't remember writing. Once, a few charges on my statement that I brushed off as my own forgetfulness. I chose not to dwell on it. The truth is, I wanted to believe she had learned discipline from the years she watched me stretch every penny. Damon's family, however, lived by another creed. The Whitfields were not wealthy by accident. Their reputation was tied to thrift, to investment, to holding land and money as tightly as their name. I had heard Damon's mother once say, half in jest, that a Whitfield could account for every dime spent since Reconstruction. In that family, waste was more shameful than scandal. It was attention I pretended not to see my daughter's craving for, more against her husband's rigid pride. But when worlds like those collide, someone is always left paying the bill. And it was only a matter of time before I discovered just how high the cost could climb. It was a Thursday afternoon when the floor first shifted beneath me. I had stopped at the Harris Teeter on Houston Northcutt Boulevard, list in hand, thinking only about supper and the small comforts of routine. Bread, eggs, a little salmon if it was on sale. Nothing extravagant. The cashier scanned each item with the rhythm I'd heard 1,000 times before, and I slid my card across the machine without thought. The pause came first. Then the flat tone declined. I blinked. Certain it was an error. Run it again, please. She did. Her expression polite but guarded. Declined. Heat rose in my chest. I knew my balance. I was careful. Every bill was paid. Every purchase noted. Let me try one more time. The third attempt brought the same result. People shifted in line behind me, and I felt their eyes on my back. I reached into my purse for another card, one I rarely used, and forced a smile as the transaction finally went through. But the groceries felt heavier than usual when I carried them to the car. Inside, panic began to bloom. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I set the bags down in the kitchen and went straight to the desk in the corner, powering up my laptop with a tightness in my throat. When the statement loaded, I gripped the edge of the desk. Thousands gone. Not just small withdrawals, but charges stacked like bricks clothing boutiques, airline reservations, a beachfront hotel. My stomach churned as I scrolled. Each line another cut across years of discipline. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. Someone had drained what I had guarded with my life. I closed the laptop with a snap, staring at the quiet walls of my house. And for the first time in years, I felt the walls tilt inward. I needed to know who had touched what was mine. And I needed to know quickly, because if my savings had vanished overnight, then so had the trust I once believed unshakable. That evening, the sound of Camilla's car pulling into the driveway set my pulse racing. I had spent the last hour pacing, replaying the numbers in my head, praying there was some explanation that would restore order. She walked in as though the day belonged to her. A silk blouse shimmered under the hall light, her shoes clicking across the tile, and a shopping bag from one of the King Street boutiques dangled from her wrist. "Don't you look pleased with yourself?" I said, trying to steady my voice. She twirled once, letting the fabric catch the air. "Do you like it?" "Oh, and Damon doesn't know yet. But I booked us a little getaway, Key West. A surprise. We fly out Saturday." The words hit me like a gust of cold air. "Camilla," I said slowly, "how did you pay for all this?" Her eyes flashed, almost playful. "Why so serious?" "Mom, you left the card on the table." It was practically an invitation. She slipped the blouse from her shoulder to check the fit, then added with a smirk, "I just used it for what I deserve. After all, you've always told me to reach for more." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The daughter I had carried, taught, and sheltered was speaking as if my life's work, my savings, my stability were hers by right. "You drained thousands," I whispered, barely trusting my voice. "Do you understand what you've done?" She waved a hand, dismissive. "Relax. You'll be fine. Damon will be fine. Everyone bounces back. Don't make such a fuss." Her carelessness cut deeper than the theft itself. It wasn't hunger or desperation, it was entitlement. Wrapped in silk and polished nails, I stood there, unable to summon words strong enough, while she hummed to herself and carried her bags into the spare room. But the moment would not pass quietly, because as her door shut behind her, I heard another sound rising in the house, the sharp slam of the front door and the heavy steps of her husband crossing the threshold. The front door slammed so hard the frame rattled. Damon strode into the living room, his face flushed. A folded bank statement clenched in his fist. "Who stole my $20,000? His voice cracked through the house like a whip. I froze, the pieces locking together in a rush. Months ago, Damon had added me as an authorized user on the Whitfield family's joint account, a gesture meant to help with household expenses when Camilla was between jobs. I had used it sparingly, always with his knowledge groceries, utilities, nothing more. The card I thought of as mine was never fully mine at all. Camilla emerged from the hallway, still glowing from her new purchases. At the sight of the paper in his hand, her color drained. "Damon, wait. Don't you dare," he cut in, his voice sharp. "Do you think I wouldn't notice boutique charges, airline tickets, a hotel in Key West? You think my family doesn't review these accounts? Do you have any idea what kind of humiliation this is?" She stammered, her bravado collapsing. It was supposed to be a surprise. I didn't mean a surprise." He nearly laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You spent $20,000 of my family's money to play dress-up and book a vacation we never agreed to." My throat tightened. "Damon, I didn't know she—" He turned to me, softer, but no less wounded. "Mrs. Carter, I trusted you with that card. My parents trusted you. And now this," Camilla's eyes darted between us, desperate for rescue. "Mom, please, say something. Tell him it isn't as bad as it looks." But the words caught in my mouth. For the first time, I saw not just the carelessness, but the fracture between them. A break I could not mend. Damon lowered the statement onto the table with trembling hands. "Someone is going to answer for this. Tonight." And in the silence that followed, I knew the choice would no longer belong to her alone. Damon stood rigid, his voice carrying the weight of a verdict. 20,000. Either it's repaid, or I take it further. My family will not let this pass. Camilla clutched her blouse as though it could shield her. "Please, Damon. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. I'll fix it. Just give me time." He shook his head. "Time doesn't restore trust." Her eyes darted to me, wide and pleading. "Mom, you can help. Just this once. You always have something put away. You know I'll pay it back." Her words pierced deeper than she realized. I thought of the years I'd spent scrubbing through extra shifts, of the pension I'd chipped away to give her a wedding under the live oaks, of the bills I carried so she could have the life she wanted. Every dollar I had ever saved had already been poured into her future. "Camilla," I said quietly, "I cannot do this for you. You took the money. You must answer for it." Her face twisted with disbelief. "After everything, you'd turn your back on me now?" I steadied myself. "I've carried you for decades. I worked until my body ached so you wouldn't have to. But love is not an endless well you can draw from without giving back. This is not mine to fix." Damon's jaw clenched. But for the first time that night, his anger shifted into grim resolve rather than fire. "Then she faces the consequences. Repayment, or my parents press charges. No exceptions." Camilla's sob cracked the air. but I didn't move to embrace her. I wanted to. God knows I did. But something in me knew the cost of saving her again. Protection had blurred into permission, and permission had led us here. I folded my hands on the table and met Damon's stare. She will take responsibility, whatever that means. The room fell silent except for Camilla's uneven breaths. The line had been drawn, and this time I would not step over it. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, heavy and unyielding, as if waiting for the storm that was still to come. The next morning, Camilla moved with a desperation I had never seen. She loaded shopping bags into the trunk of her car and drove back to King Street, hoping the same clerks who had admired her purchases would take them back. Hours later, she returned with only a thin envelope of cash. "Final sale," she muttered, eyes rimmed red. They wouldn't budge. She tried the airline next, pleading over the phone, pacing the kitchen with a notebook in hand. When she hung up, her voice cracked. Non-refundable. All of it. The hotel, too. What she had clawed back barely touched the debt. Damon's patience thinned with each failed attempt. He called one of his cousins that evening, his voice carrying through the walls. I heard the words fraudulent use, and my stomach knotted. When he stepped into the kitchen, his expression was set like stone. Maybe the only way she learns is if the police handle it. I steadied myself. "Damon, please, let me try first. Give her the chance to make this right without dragging the family name through the courts." His eyes searched mine. "Do you think the family name isn't already tarnished?" And he was right. Charleston was a city where whispers traveled faster than the tide. Already, I had heard from a friend at church that someone had seen Camilla's receipts discarded in the boutique parking lot. The Whitfields' reputation for restraint now carried a crack, and neighbors were eager to press their fingers against it. Still, I pressed him. "Don't close the door yet. Let her work. Let her prove she can repay. If she fails, then you'll know you gave her every chance." He finally exhaled, a sharp, reluctant sound. One chance, nothing more. Camilla sat at the table, silent, her hands clutched together. For the first time in her life, she seemed to grasp that charm and excuses would not carry her through, and as I watched her, I understood that what lay ahead would not just test her marriage, but would redraw the lines of who we were as a family. The weeks that followed carried a quiet cruelty. Camilla's phone, once buzzing with invitations, fell still. Brunch tables on East Bay no longer had a chair waiting for her, and friends who had once flocked to her photos now scrolled past without comment. Charleston's charm could be merciless when it sensed weakness. Damon tightened every rein. He removed her name from joint cards, redirected the household bills through his family's accountant, and handed her only enough cash for necessities. His warnings grew sharper with each conversation. "If this continues, Camilla, there will be nothing left to salvage between us." She tried to mask it at first, putting on lipstick before heading out as if the routine could cover the unraveling. But when she returned, her eyes betrayed her red, swollen, desperate. I watched, heart torn, and turned the knife inward. Entitlement had blinded her. Yes, but indulgence had fed it. Every time I softened, every time I said yes when no was needed, I laid another stone on the pedestal she now toppled from. One evening, after Damon had gone to bed, she sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her voice was small, stripped of the bravado that once filled every room. "I didn't want money. Not really," she whispered. "I just wanted to be admired. I wanted to walk in and feel like I mattered, not like I was invisible beside his family." Tears slid down her cheeks, smudging the makeup she had carefully applied. I reached across the table but stopped short, my hand hovering above hers. I ached to hold her, but I knew the embrace would not erase the truth. The pedestal had collapsed, and what remained was a woman searching for ground she had never learned to stand on. And in that fragile silence, I knew the moment had come to decide what kind of future she and I would choose. In the weeks that followed, I took steps I should have taken years earlier. I met with my attorney downtown, signed new papers, and placed clear language in my will. Every account was secured. Every password changed. Every point of access Camilla once had erased. For the first time, my finances felt like mine alone, not an open door waiting to be stepped through. Camilla, stripped of excuses, began her penance. Damon arranged a position for her at a small gallery on Broad Street. It was not glamorous work logging inventory, sweeping floors before opening, but it was honest. I visited once, standing outside beneath the Spanish moss, and watched her carry boxes in a plain dress, her hair pulled back, no audience but her own reflection in the window. Humiliation clung to her at first. She kept her head low, avoided neighbors, ignored the whispers that followed her across the market. Yet slowly, a change took root. She learned to arrive early, to greet customers with sincerity rather than show. For the first time, she was earning, not consuming. At home, I created a ritual of my own. I kept one credit card, not in my purse, but in a small fireproof safe tucked away in the closet. Each time I turned the key, I reminded myself that boundaries were not walls. They were the shape of respect. One evening, as I closed the safe and heard the lock click, I felt the weight of years shift from my shoulders. I still loved my daughter, and I always would. But love, I realized, does not vanish when boundaries are drawn. It survives because of them.